Almighty God, grant us the courage of Jesus Christ, your Son, to face the coronavirus pandemic with trust, strength, compassion, and resiliency. Give us the grace of the Holy Spirit to free us from fear and anxiety so we may do actions of help and support and look forward to our healing with hope. We pray for the health workers, food liners, maintenance cleaners, logistics abler, government leaders, and volunteers who continuously come together to deliver our daily needs to survive. Guide us from this time of crisis. Preserve us in peace. Protect the weak and vulnerable and those who serve the society during this pandemic. This we ask and pray in Jesus' name, our Savior. Amen. Naghahatid saya sa mga Pinoy, mga kantang tatak Pinoy. Kahit nasan ka man, kami ay mapapakinggan. Streaming worldwide, the future of radio in Manila, California, and Hong Kong. This is V81 Radio.
Malayo ka man sa iyong pamilya, dito ay hindi ka nag-iisa. Tiyak ito'y iyong hahanap-hanapin dahil ito ang nagpapasaya sa atin.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Dahil mahal namin kayo.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio. Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta hot hits o Pinoy panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man ito'y
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Dahil mahal namin kayo.
V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio. Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko. Dahil mahal namin kayo. Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio.
How can we start preparing our HR workplace towards the new normal? Engage yourselves in this one-of-a-kind discussion with seasoned HR experts. We have Mr. Ronald Turla, who has 20 years of HR experience, is a certified HR professional and ambassador of the certification under the International Federation of Professional Managers. Also with us is attorney Phil Ray Javier, an expert in labor law and the go-to counsel of several multinational companies. He is a founding partner of Tolosa Javier Law Firm and a labor law professor in Ateneo Law School. And finally, we have Miss Joanna Alberto, our corporate wellness consultant and key mover in igniting human capital and spurring innovation. Moderating this forum is educator, entrepreneur, and certified human resources professional Dorilyn V. Di Maunahay. Let us now begin preparing for the new normal.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, to all the listeners of V81 Radio Worldwide, Talk Shop Asia, and our new listeners joining this first HR forum entitled Moving Towards the New Normal. We're about 6 days close to the possible lifting of the ECQ and moving to the GCQ for some. And we know that human resources is definitely one of the areas of management that will be readily affected. Because of this, we want to be able to come up with more concrete answers for business owners and other viewers as they prepare for workplace operations in a few days. Fortunately, we have with us three seasoned experts on workplace management, organizational development, labor law, and wellness, which are very important considerations that you and your workforce will be facing. A very short backgrounder on these aspects will be shared by our experts. But the highlight of this forum is really to engage more with you, okay? So these encouraging questions are what we want to hear from you later on, and our experts shall definitely entertain you for a total of 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes towards the end of the show. So without further ado, let us begin preparing for the new normal. Of course, we would like to thank our media partner, V81 Worldwide, and our program partner, Talk Shop Asia, the Philippine retailing industry's program and communities on business exchanges. Without you, this event is not possible. For those watching, we are currently live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Ignite Manila. That's Ignite MNL and JoannaAlberto.ph. So to begin, let us first welcome our first speaker or expert, Mr. Ronald Turla. He is a workplace and organizational development expert and is a sought after certified trainer on emotional intelligence for Talent Smart, the world's leading provider of EQ assessment tools based in San Diego, California, USA. As a human resource professional with over 15 years experience in human resources management and organizational development, Ronnie has occupied managerial positions in several companies such as 7-Eleven, Yellow Cab, and 24 Customer Philippines, a call center company where he handled almost 900 agents. He runs his own management consultancy services known as Talent Reach, which primarily caters to growing small and medium enterprises. He is likewise affiliated with Southeast Asian Speakers and Trainers Bureau, Inc., which markets his EQ programs. He is also a regular speaker for Arriva Events Management and is likewise a director for the International Federation of Professional Managers, an institution that carries the Global HR Certification Certified Human Resources Professional. So without further ado, is a fellow CHRP, Mr. Ronald Turla. Ron?
Hi, good morning to everyone. I hope, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me as I speak? Yeah. Okay, so, uh, okay, let me use another for our first speaking. So I hope that you can hear me. This is my best effort to speak. So okay, so let me now start off the presentation. So thank you, V81. Thank you, Dory, for collaborating with me for this project. And we're going to discuss. No, also I'd like to acknowledge our guest as well, the other experts who will be speaking. So stay tuned as we discuss this very exciting topic. Okay, so let me now share my screen as I start my presentation. Okay, so we're talking about responding to the new normal because of our present crisis. No, so let me start off first with this particular slide. Now, if you can see, there are seven key people topics, and then the responses that we have to be able to focus on. No? This was presented by the Boston Consulting Group, no? And then they focused on three major areas: people health, workforce readiness, communication, and support culture. Okay, so for people health, it's mentioned here to accelerate smart, no, meaning that the new smart way of working would be working from home. Okay, so those things have to be set in place. Second would be enhancing health and hygiene, no, meaning that people have to improve in terms of their workplace hygiene. Washing their hands, guaranteeing social distancing, and of course supporting and monitoring employee health. No? On the other hand, we also have workforce readiness by making sure we mitigate people risk. No? We do that by identifying critical roles, decreasing risk exposures, and also contingency staff and planning. No? So we also have to look at managing workforce flexibility by looking at the business impact of COVID-19, adapting existing workforce to current situation, adjusting also our hiring to temporary adjusted demand, no? And also managing individual employee downtime, because we know for a fact that after this quarantine is lifted, there will be some major adjustments by our workforce. No? The third area would be communication and support culture. No? So that means we have to communicate openly with empathy. No? We have to look at communication channels, having clear communication structures, making sure that timely information is given to our employees, and of course, educating our employees and managing COVID-19. No? Number six here, as part of the people topics, would be standing together, no? Preparing leaders, supporting their employee and of course their families, building and enhancing the ecosystems that we have, and of course fulfilling a target purpose. No, so the last one is of course speeding up digital readiness. No, identifying the need and deliver the need hardware. No, so providing appropriate softwares and tools, no, for the workforce, and of course training and people on digital readiness, and of course building, no, the technology support system. In this case, also another global consulting company, Deloitte, no, espoused the putting people first strategy. No, here's a checklist that you can look at. No, particularly for the workforce and the workplace. No, so these are the areas that again would be very important. No, as we go to the new normal, these three areas have to be really looked upon. Now, another area that I'd like to share, no, very interesting, is the one provided by McKinsey, no. So thinking across five horizons, no. So from resolving, no, the COVID, no, the virus, no, and then moving towards resiliency, no, and then going into returning, no, coming up with a business continuity plan, and then of course not just returning but reimagination, no, looking at the next normal, no, and eventually reforming, no. So I guess after the new normal, or when the new normal sets in, no, some reforms will be made, no, particularly with our previous workplace practices. So there will be a lot of things that will happen after this crisis. Now, what is the role of HR in keeping people safe and sound? So let me offer some um, some tips and some guidelines. No? So of course, we start with some basic infection prevention plan. Okay, so I think some of these are already being implemented or being recommended by the government. Okay, again, some of the major things to do is to encourage workers to stay at home if they are sick. Okay, establishing policies and practices that support social distancing, such as flexible work site and flexible work hours to increase. No, so again, all of this are ways to prevent the infection from damaging the business. Another is identification and isolation of sick people. No? So again, HR should be able to develop policies and procedures when employees report once they experience symptoms, or um, policies for employee with symptoms to isolate, no, until they can be removed from their work sites. No? So here are certain things to look out. No? Suggesting employee who have symptoms should notify supervisor and stay home. No? Employee would appear to have symptoms upon arrival or become sick during the day should immediately be separated from others or sent to hospital, restricting the number of personnel entering isolation areas and contact people with symptoms. No? And of course, if people are confirmed to have the COVID infection, employers should inform fellow employees of their possible exposure. Okay. Very important also is the aspect of training. No, training and properly protecting designated people who is responsible for the sick people. Now, also part of creating a COVID-19 team is monitoring breaking news about COVID. No? So I guess we're all aware of that, that there are a lot of breaking news nowadays in the internet, in the TV, in the media. No? So announcements from the government and authorized agencies and local actions at all critical sites. No? Of course, securing your workplace health and safety. Okay, so probably the responsibility of this team could be to set up a system, not to monitor employees who are ill or suspected to be ill in the event of the pandemic. No, and then of course setting up a process to facilitate or encourage the return of employees to work once they are better or at the end of the quarantine period. No? And of course, identifying the local public health authority and identifying employees who will liaise with this organization. Okay. Now, you also have to have some workplace control. Okay. Probably the engineering control here involves isolating employee from work-related hazards without relying on employee behaviors, no? Like high efficiency air filter, ventilation rate, physical barriers, and drive-through window for customer services. Okay. For administrative control, this might be implemented by encouraging sick workers to stay at home, implementing social distancing, discontinuing non essential traveling policy and gathering, establishing safe work practices, such as what has been mentioned. And of course, having PPEs. No? Again, if used properly, this can help prevent some exposure, but shouldn't take the place of other prevention measures. Now, moving forward and going deeper in terms of the role of HR in making business up and running, no, as you can see in this slide, you can see the statistics shared by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2017 and 2018. There's a share of workers who can telework by industry. So teleworking or working from home will be the new norm. No? So if you see the industries which are most likely practicing already work from home, this would be the financial, professional services, and information. No? And of course, if you can see on the right side of the screen, you can see a decision three, whether to determine whether you will be doing remote work. No, so whether so I suggest for HR to actually come up with a decision three, whether to identify remote workers or for those who will be really just working on site. So how do we make this work from home work? Um, there are four areas that you can look at if you're in HR. So starting off with structure, making sure that you have a good cross-functional team and a defined role and responsibilities, defining the outcomes that you need when you go back to work. On the side of people, trying to look at the leadership's increased role in providing direction, energizing the team, no, and connecting the dots. So more than ever, I think the leader has to really step up and be able to provide vision and direction for people. No? On the side of the process, there should be some cadence of meeting to synchronize work and remove blocker across the team. Uh, Coming up with a decision process for escalation, having some source or a digital source for people, no, to see what's really the truth, and also having a result oriented performance management. Okay, finally, you also have technology. It has to be set up, the infrastructure for remote work, no, and also adopting some digital tools, no, to facilitate communication and decision making. Okay, so again, not to forget is the security standard practices, no, or protecting your data. On the side now of employee well-being, no, so definitely as HR you would see that people will call out for help, no. So let's look at the different areas of well-being, no. So as will be discussed more, no, later by one of our panelists as well. Looking at the well-being during the COVID-19, you have the physical aspect, no. some of the practices that you can do is to remind employee to engage in regular physical activity, providing health to both preventive and curative. For inclusivity, setting time for virtual team more often. So the more meetings, virtual meetings there are, the better. Scheduling a fixed time for standing meeting. For working practices, providing ergonomic self-check, or looking at working time and break, making sure that there are enough breaks during our working hours. For the financial, looking at the financial well-being online. Okay, and of course, providing information relevant financial schemes by all parties. And of course, emotional, offering access to third party and bereavement services. Okay, so I guess um, the aspect of the employee responses or employee action should be also triggered here. So it's also a reminder for us to be respectful and empathetic remote coworkers. So how do we do that when we do our work from home? Okay, number one, to understand what each person is dealing with at home. That not everyone has the same amount of responsibilities and the same setup of their family, so we have to understand them. Second is to stay in touch daily. Okay, so by showing that you are in touch with them, that takes out the isolation problem. Third is to make it safe to ask for help. Okay, so make sure that you're open, and as a leader, you have to be able to make sure that you're ready to help a person who is in need. Next is to be forgiving and patient, and to realize that it's okay not to be perfect. For those people who are quite perfectionist, this is not a very good time to really emphasize more on the errors, but really look at the progress that you're making. And of course, finally, to still have fun, and infuse some, games, personal reflection, some kind of happy hour after work one day, which is normally done in the pre-COVID in this case. So all of these are ways to be respectful and empathetic remote coworkers. So we also have to be prepared for absenteeism spikes. So this could happen. So let's be prepared of it. Okay. So make sure that we have some workforce planning that is present. Okay. Also, let's try to implement some flexible policies. Okay, so these are things that we need to be aware of. No? Of course, reviewing our total reward policy and practices. Ayan, so there are a lot of things, there are a lot of choices that could be done. Okay, and probably this is something that in another session I'll probably talk more about this. Okay, and finally, as I end my presentation for HR, as you prepare for the new normal, here are critical actions that you should consider. Starting off with workforce planning, redeployments, having flexibility in the workforce, of course, workforce reduction and probably downsizing. Okay, cost management on the part of the business, focused recruiting, okay, and also adopting agility into HR, looking at your performance management, your employee engagement, also looking at the leadership capabilities, introducing change management tactics and strategies, and of course, having structured internal and external communication. Okay, so all of this are part of preparing for the new normal for HR. Okay, so let me now go back to my screen and Dory. Yeah. That wraps up my
Oh, hi.
presentation. Preparing for the new normal.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Torla. Wow, that's a lot of information. And from there,
It probably deserves another
many business owners, yeah, many business owners are now being aware of flexible, remote, work from home arrangements. And I bet that these are some questions that will be raised later. So now I also know that many of you are concerned about the legal areas of human resources, okay? And I understand and agree that this is definitely one of the most difficult areas in HR. difficult to understand because, of course, it requires adequate practice and knowledge of labor law. So, with us is our next expert and a fellow faculty member of mine from the Ateneo Professional Schools, Attorney Pilar Javier. So, Attorney Javier is a partner at the Tolosa Javier Law Firm, and as I mentioned, is a faculty member of the Ateneo Law School. His practices focus on labor, civil, criminal litigation, and dispute resolution. He's also adept in providing advice on data privacy and competition law issues. His expertise in all facets of labor and employment laws, such as but not limited to employment contracts, labor standards, compliance, contracting arrangements, collective bargaining negotiations, termination procedures, illegal dismissal, and labor standards litigation, to name just a few. Attorney Javier also served as an in house lawyer for multinational companies, and he ranked second place in the Philippine bar examinations in 2010. So let us now welcome Attorney Pilar Javier. Attorney Javier?
Thanks, Dor. Dor, I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yep,
All right,
all good.
thank you. Let me just pull up my slide. Good morning to all the participants. Personally, I'm glad to be here. I've learned a lot from Sir Ronald. The ECQ sooner or later shall be lifted. With the lifting of the ECQ, restriction will ease up a bit, and we may find ourselves allowed to open our businesses or to return to work. Uh, Soon we will realize that when we return, things as we know them are no longer the same. Hence the new normal. Certainly, the new normal will be temporary. Unfortunately, none of us would know whether that temporary is short or long. As business owner, I'm sure our main concerns and our options for our business and how do we care for our employees. So my short presentation will aim to provide you an idea of these two things. First, what are the important legal concepts in times like this, including what are the options of business owners. And second, what are the requirements for the employers or business owners as we reopen our businesses. So more or less, my presentation is just 20 minutes. So if you have some questions, I think later we have time for Q&A. All right, so let's start with important legal concepts. The first I think that we have to emphasize is that not just because we are in the middle of a pandemic, management prerogatives are suspended. They are not suspended. They remain to be with you as business owners. We have been receiving questions, for example, whether an employer can discipline his employee during this time and during the new normal. Discipline meaning suspend or terminate. The answer to that question, of course, is yes. Your management prerogative is not suspended because of the lockdown. You may still exercise management prerogative correctly. You may terminate or suspend your employees. Just a reminder, in several interviews with the officers of the Department of Labor and Employment, they request that during this period, while admitting that management prerogative is still there, they request that business owners still show compassion to their employees. So in other words, relax ng konti yung implementation of company policies. Siguro warning muna before we suspend or we terminate employees. Next item that I'd like to highlight is because management prerogatives are suspended in the same manner employees' rights have not changed. They are still there and we have to respect them as business owners. May right pa din sila and therefore the benefits under the labor code will still apply even we are in the middle of the lockdown. But take note, the principle of no work, no pay may apply. In our jurisdiction in the Philippines, no work, no pay principle is admitted. In other words, if the employee does not work, then it's possible that he will not be paid. He may, of course, use some leaves, but if there's no longer leave availments, then if he is not going to work, then the no work principle may apply. And finally, which is the second part of my discussion, is that take note, in the new normal, there will be new guidelines. These guidelines are temporary, but they are mandatory, so we have to take note of them. many of us are already implementing these options, but so I'll just like to give some reminders. For example, work from home. Many of the companies are implementing work from home arrangement. Just a reminder: if the employee is working from home, the benefits are the same, because theoretically and presumably the employee is still working in the same manner and level as if the employee is working in the office. So the only difference is working in the in in the confines of his home, so that the benefits should be the same. Perhaps the only exception would be is if there are benefits that are conditional to to the employee going to the office. For example, yung mga Grab receipt reimbursements, ganyan, yung mga gas reimbursement. Obviously, those allowances are given because the employee is going to the office. So yun siguro, because the condition is not happening, going to the office is the condition, pwedeng hindi na bayaran yung mga allowances na yon. But take note, I know for a fact that there are some companies still paying these kinds of allowances because understanding that the employee is working from home and therefore may additional costs, for example, electricity at saka internet connection. So to set it off, yeah, some companies are still paying these kinds of allowances. In the new normal, pwede rin yung skeleton force. When we open our businesses, expectedly, hindi pa yan magte-take off. Baka konti pa lang yung customers or clients, and therefore it is possible for us to open our businesses with skeleton force only. Hence, only a portion of our manpower will be reporting for work. Yung the rest, pwedeng no work, no pay. Meron ding nagro-rotation of workers that is allowed under the law. So, for example, the company is operating still 6 days a week. Merong magre-report ng MWF, may magre-report ng TTHS. So the company is still open for 6 days, but the employees are being paid half of the salary they are receiving previous to the new normal because of the rotation of workers. So pwede din yan. Yung iba naman, pwede rin reduction of work hours. For example, the company decides to just open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So yung mga employees will just report half day. Yung first batch would be in the morning and the second batch will be in the afternoon. Pwede lahat yung mga, ang tawag ng DOLE dyan ay flexible working arrangement. The only requirement is, of course, you have to consult your employees. You make them understand what the arrangement is, get their inputs, and also you have to notify the Department of Labor and Employment before you implement any flexible working arrangement. Later on, I'll show you the form used to notify the Department of Labor and Employment. So take note of the words, just notify. You don't need the approval or the consent of the Department of Labor and Employment. All you have to do is to notify the department. In the right side, yung medyo mas advanced na yung option. No? Sometimes, hindi sapat yung work from home, skeleton force, rotation of workers, reduction of work. Mukhang yung iba, kailangan talagang magbawas ng tao. No? Unfortunately. Under the Philippine law, retrenchment, or as you know it, layoff, is an allowed reason to terminate employees. Ang tawag ng labor code dyan ay authorized cause for termination. So pwede yan. May mga elements lang. So I'll just run through the element. The first element is that the retrenchment is necessary to prevent losses. So may financial impact. The second element is that the losses must be substantial. Hindi pwede yung maliit lang or de minimis. The third element is that the losses are actual or imminent. No? And it must be proved by convincing and credible evidence. So if you are questioned because you terminated some employees, your self-declaration might not be allowed or might not be sufficient to prove that you validly implemented retrenchment. Ang hinahanap ng labor courts normally dyan, yung mga audited financial statements. So you have to be prepared in proving that your declaration that you are suffering from business losses must have some sufficient support, like audited financial statement. The fourth element is that you must exercise retrenchment implementation in good faith. Hindi pwede yung nag-exercise ka ng retrenchment kasi gusto mo lang tanggalin yung mga taong ayaw mo. So it has to be in good faith. And the fifth element will somehow ensure that you are exercising good faith. Kasi yung fifth element, kailangan meron kang fair and reasonable criteria in choosing who to terminate. So kailangan mong gumawa ng criteria. Normally, ang criteria ay yung performance or yung seniority. So, ang mga matatanggal, yung mga mas mabababa, yung performance rating. So, you have to have those criteria. Second, pwede rin yung suspension of operations. Sa Philippine law, pwede yan. Basta wag lang sumobra ng 6 months. If the suspension of operation would last for more than 6 months, it may amount to constructive dismissal, which is illegal in the Philippines. Kasi pag sumobra na ng 6 months, yung suspension of operations, i-terminate mo na yung empleyado, for example, due to permanent closure or retrenchment, para mabayaran siya ng separation pay. Kasi during the period of suspension for 6 months, no work, no pay scheme yan. So walang sahod yung mga employees. So ang law, nililimit niya ng 6 months para wag naman masyadong matagal. The requirement only there is that it has to be exercised in good faith. Yun ang requirement. The next one is permanent closure. Kung talagang hindi na kaya ng retrenchment or simple suspension of operation, the law does not compel a business owner to remain in business. The business owner can decide to close shop. In fact, there are two kinds of closure. The first one is because of business losses, and the second one is because of some reason. In other words, the owner can decide to close the business anytime. The only requirement is that it must be exercised in good faith, and it is the final option. There are no other recourse but to close the business. Take note, for retrenchment and permanent closure, the procedure required is you inform the employee with written notice 30 days prior to the implementation of the closure or the retrenchment. You also need to inform the Department of Labor and Employment 30 days prior to the implementation of the retrenchment or permanent closure. And also you need to pay separation pay. The amount of separation pay for retrenchment and permanent closure would be 1 month basic salary or 1/2 month basic salary per year of service, whichever is higher. Take note, the Supreme Court has already said that if the permanent closure is due to business losses, the business owner is not required to pay separation pay. So again, if the permanent closure is due to business losses, the employer or the business owner is not required to pay separation pay. Of course, that goes without saying that the business owner is not prevented from still paying the employee or by giving financial assistance. But as a matter of law, the business owner is not required if the reason for the closure is business losses. Here is the sample form that you may accomplish if you want to notify the Department of Labor and Employment for flexible working arrangement or temporary closure or retrenchment. So you can download this form from the Department of Labor and Employment website. I'll go to the second part of my topic. I'm sure you have question in the first, but I'll just wait for the question and answer portion. For the second part, these are employers' obligations. These are not nice to haves. In other words, these are mandatory. These are minimum requirements. The employer must have this in the new normal. It's the guidance given to us by the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Labor and Employment when they issued interim guidelines for workplace prevention and control of COVID-19. So this is the minimum requirement. These are the minimum standards that we have to comply as business owners. So the number one requirement would be the business owner must formulate company policies and strictly implement them. The company policies that the business owner will implement must have 4 components. Emphasize to employees to stay healthy. The second would be to reduce transmission of COVID-19. The third one is to minimize contact rate. And the last one would be to reduce the risk of infection of COVID-19. So let's go through them one by one quickly. The first one is to emphasize the employees to stay healthy. So the company policy must be able to remind the employees to eat nutritious and cook food, drink plenty of fluids and avoid alcoholic beverages, have adequate rest and 8 hours sleep, and exercise regularly. Take note in the same guidelines, the Department of Labor and Employment encouraged the business owner to provide employees free medicines and vitamins. It's not mandatory, it's just encouraged. No? And also, the Department of Labor and Employment is asking the business owners to provide referral for workers needing counseling or presenting with mental health concerns. So take note of that as well. The second aspect of the company policy would be to reduce transmission of COVID-19. Here are the requirements. The company policy must require the employees to wear face masks at all times. Take note in the guidelines, the responsibility of giving face masks would be on the part of the employer. It is the employer which should provide appropriate face masks to its workers. The second requirement is the company policy must require the employees, in fact, even guests, to accomplish the daily health symptoms questionnaire, uh, where the employees will be asked about how they feel and where did they travel, if any. So that the later on the nurse or the safety officer can assess the condition of the employee. The third one is that those employees or guests entering the premises of the employer must have their temperature checked. In the guidance, the temperature is 37.5. Pagka 37.5, you need to isolate the individual. You give the individual 5 minutes rest, and then you check the temperature again. If the temperature is 37.5 or higher, you as employers, we are required to isolate the individual for further assessment. And of course, we need to provide the employees some alcohol and sanitizers. Additional requirements is to provide disinfectant foot bath in our premises. And also, if there will be equipments or vehicles entering our premises, they must go through disinfection. For stores or for offices wherein there's a queue or a long queue, the employer, the business owner, is required to mandate that the people lining up must observe 1 meter physical distance. Inside the buildings of the workplaces, the employers or the business owners are required to disinfect the workplaces at least every 2 hours. And also the washrooms and the toilets must have sufficient clean water and soap. And again, sanitizers must be available. The employers are also required to maintain 1 meter distancing for workspaces, discourage eating in communal areas. If they need to eat, you should require your employees not to eat with other employees. One table, one person is the requirement, and 1 meter rule should be complied with. The canteens and the kitchens should be cleaned and disinfected regularly. All right. The third item for the company rules that our company rules must have would be to minimize contact rate. I'm leaving this here for you to read, but essentially these items tell us that we have to comply with distancing requirements. And if possible, the work could be performed outside the office where alternative working arrangement could be practicable. All right. And the last item for formulation of company policies is to reduce the risk of inspection. As mentioned a while ago, you bring the suspected worker of having COVID-19 to an isolation area so that proper personnel may assess the individual. The company must also have company protocols for the transport of suspected COVID-19 cases. And you need to disinfect the workplace if one of your employees is suspected to be having COVID-19. In fact, under the rules, if there is a suspected worker with COVID-19, all workers who were in the office with the suspected COVID-19 worker must be sent home. And observe the 14-day quarantine requirement. So 14 days siyang naka-quarantine, hindi mo na siya papasok. But when the test of the suspected COVID-19 worker comes out and it's negative, pwede nang pumasok lahat. But in the meantime, those workers who reported for work with him should be observing the 14-day quarantine requirement. All right, so the second requirement is just an implementation of the first one. You have to keep your workplace safe. If COVID-19 tests are required under the rules, it is the employer who must pay the COVID-19 testing kits. This one, you need to designate a safety officer to monitor compliance with the policy. Take note, the word used by the guidelines is designate. It did not use the word hire or engage. So in other words, you can assign an already employee to have additional function to be a safety officer. So you are not required to hire an additional manpower for this. You just have to designate an individual to be the safety officer. Enhanced health insurance of workers. I'm wondering whether we are now required as business owners to get additional health insurance. But during the forum yesterday with the Department of Labor and Employment, they said PhilHealth has ramped up its capability. So it would appear that the PhilHealth insurance is sufficient. But of course, if the business owner is capable, nothing prevents us from adding up to the health insurance of the workers. The employer, the business owner, must also be able to lessen the travel or the movement of the people. Where possible, provide shuttle service and decent accommodation. And as a request, the Department of Labor and Employment is asking us to hire from local community. Or if you have many branches, transfer your employees to the locality where they are near so that we could lessen the travel or movement of people. The last requirement would be to put up a COVID-19 hotline and call center so that your employees can report or can update you with the developments as so far as their health is concerned. This is my last slide, but I'd like to remind everyone that in the guidelines, there is also a requirement that if you have an employee above 60 years old or an employee of any age with comorbidities or pre-existing illnesses like hypertension or is immunocompromised or with high-risk pregnancy, the requirement is to exert all efforts to make this individual work from home instead of asking them to report for work because, as you would probably understand, the risk of COVID-19 infection would be higher for this individual. This is my last slide. I'd like to thank you and I'll be ready for the questions later. I'm returning the floor to Dor. Hi, Dor.
Wow, that was really so much information. Now, for those who are wondering, don't worry because we will be sharing the slides of Attorney Javier and the rest of the experts afterwards. So, one option is to write down or reply with your email addresses. And as for the registrants or pre-registrants, you will automatically receive the slide. So don't worry about that. And they will also give their contact details for further questions because I know 30 minutes is not enough. So I noticed that in attorney's presentation, there was a lot of mention of good faith and on the part of the employer. So this is perhaps one of the things that can be redefined later. All right. So we have quite a number of questions for you. But before that, let us move on to our last speaker. She is a corporate wellness expert, a co-founder and managing partner of Ignite Center for Peak Experiences, a corporate wellness consultant, and a key mover in igniting human capital. She has 27 years in the aviation industry as a frontliner, training leaders, managing performance, and coaching in a multicultural environment. She also integrates design thinking with effectual wellness and other self-care modalities thriving on creating innovative and transformational programs that empower individuals to foster a positive mindset, behavior, and lifestyle, and in order to achieve holistic prosperity for the self and others, as well as creating impact on teams, organizations, and of course, society. So let us now hear from our final expert, Miss Joanna Alberto.
Hi,
Joanna?
good morning. Yeah, thank you
Hi,
for taking
morning.
time. Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us on this beautiful Saturday. Okay, let's make this a bit more easygoing, right? There's so much information already that we've been hearing. So please allow me to share stories that will bring us back to the foundations of what it means to be human. Okay, as the Dor mentioned, I was in the aviation industry for 27 years. I started working when I was 5 years old. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding aside, I'm a lot older than Ronnie and attorney. So out of those 27 years, I was working in a local airline for 18 years. Life was good. I get paid to travel, shop, and sleep in fancy hotels. So why would I complain, right? But there was something missing. I told myself, this isn't the life that I want. I'm supposed to be happy, but I feel that there's something that's not whole inside me. I could do my job with my eyes closed. So just to give you a proper context, in this local airline, the only in-flight positions are flight attendant or cabin crew, purser or cabin manager, and pilot. So because of seniority, I knew that I would probably get that purser position or that cabin manager's position in another 10 years or so. So absolutely, there was no career growth. So I decided to make a big leap of faith. I left my husband physically and my unico hijo, who was then 13 years old, and joined an airline in the Middle East. I was the oldest flight attendant from my old company who joined. My initial plan was to stay for only 2 years and come back after. But ended up living in the desert for 9 solid years. And despite my extensive flying experience, I had to restart from scratch. I had to accept the lowest position as a flight attendant, assigned in economy cabin. It wasn't easy. My bosses then, the cabin managers there that I fly with, were like half my age. And I was already used to the procedures, the norms, the rules, the culture, what else? Leadership, language, the lingo that I've been exposed to in my previous airline for 18 years, right? So I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn a lot of things. And it required a complete brain reboot. Call it brain reboot, no? A basic flight attendance course takes 3 months of non-stop studying and performing. We do a lot of drills, from emergency procedures to first aid to normal and abnormal flight simulations. It's not that easy, like others think. For instance, if a plane is about to crash, flight attendants are trained to shout a command. In my previous airline, the command is emergency, bend down. And in this new airline, the command is bend down, hold your knees. Okay, so we would be practicing this inside an aircraft simulator, a high-tech aircraft simulator with effects like smoke, blasting engine sounds, fire outside the window, tilting left and right. You know, it feels like you're inside a real emergency situation. And it's amazing, right? So, but guess what? Since I was the most experienced in the class, I was the first one who was called to demonstrate. So I heard the make-believe command of the captain. Brace for impact. What do you think happened? I shouted my old command. And all my classmates were like half laughing and half confused, trying to figure out where did that come from. Good thing I still aced my class. I shouted with authority and presence of mind, the skill that I have acquired, of course, all these years because of practice. This kind of simulation is something that we need to do every year to renew our flying licenses. I'm so blessed that I didn't get to practice it in a real emergency situation. That's why I'm still alive today. Thank God. Um, this Middle Eastern airline was a startup, and it was very, very, very aggressive. The airline worked its way up from a startup to a 5-star rating in just 13 years. That's very quick for an airline. And for myself, in less than 6 months, I climbed up to a cabin manager's position, which currently you would probably need 5 layers, 5 positions to reach that level. This was just the work aspect of my restart. For those who've been in the Middle East, you know that this is not like US or Europe. It's not a normal place. I felt like I was a fish transferred from an aquarium to a cage. There were so many things that you couldn't do. You could go to jail by not paying your credit card bill for 3 consecutive months, or for wearing shorts or sleeveless in public, or even holding hands with your boyfriend or girlfriend. I had to embrace this, along with bouts of homesickness, anxiety, stress because of this huge amount of responsibility that's placed on top of my shoulder, being a leader in the front line. But guess what? Life was really good to me. In the last couple of years, before I resigned, I was invited to apply to be part of a well-sought pool of leadership and development team of trainers. So I get to fly and at the same time teach in the training academy. And there we were tasked, for lack of a better term, to brainwash and train leaders and teams to achieve that 5-star rating. We had 140 nationalities at that time. We were doing back-to-back trainings. We were collaborating with the company's learning and development team, redesigning training materials, delivering them by flying in people from all over the world, including top executives and frontliners of our partner airlines. It was a humongous effort to create a global, company-wide paradigm shift in order to propel the airline to greater heights. I was asked to do things that I couldn't possibly think I could do. On my second day, my boss asked me to co-train with him all the managers of airport lounges who would be flying in the next day. I didn't even have a clue that I would be teaching. I didn't know what I was going to teach. The training module was given to me the night before, but I survived. I even had the chance to nudge my boss because he was jumping in off cue. He wasn't also prepared. So of all the things that we did, this is what I can clearly remember. To achieve our mission, we had to restart everyone and everything by calling our passengers guests. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that made a difference. And to do that, we had to change our lens and shift from looking at warm bodies filling up empty seats in the aircraft to humans, better yet, as guests. Bisita, somebody whom you would welcome and excited to bring to your home. Okay, so that's a good takeaway, right? If we need to restart people, we need to restart by treating people as human beings. So what happened to me? Why did I leave at the peak of my career? I folded my wings June 2016, around 4 years ago. So that's just a few months before the airline received its 5-star rating. I remember literally jumping up and down at home here in Manila when I heard the news. I felt like I was still part of the team. But that's just about it. Because before that happened, management was already making unfavorable decisions after unfavorable decisions, just to keep up with the airline's brand promise that we gave our loyal customers. that we were slowly failing to deliver. And by doing so, it impacted how they were treating us, we, the people, the employees. Yes, we were successful in restarting our workforce to treat our customers as guests. Yet, we, the employees, slowly felt that we were being treated as numbers. That was the time that I realized that my mission in the desert was done. There was a disconnect. My values were no longer aligned with the values of the company. Thus, I veered away from my commitment to achieving a shared mission with the airline. I decided to head home for another restart. Luckily, I was prepared. I knew clearly where I was being led and what I needed to do. All my life, I'm so used to listening to this inner voice that tells me this is where I need to go. You may call it God, divine self, heart whispers, or Holy Spirit, subconscious maybe, or the universe, whatever that is. What I know is that it speaks my truth. That's why I was drawn to join Ignite, the company that I belong to now. Because in Ignite, I was able to define that voice. It is called GPS, a personal navigation system, like Waze. I miss Waze. It helps us to get to our destination. And GPS stands for genius, purpose, and service. Genius, purpose, and service. Genius is our own unique gift. That's yours and yours alone. Yes, we believe that each and every person is a genius, which points to our purpose. We are all born to do something in this world. We have our own purpose, which we are drawn to manifest in our lives by serving others. Genius, purpose, and service. And this is at the core of what we do in Ignite. In my role, leading the Ignite Center for Peak Experiences, it's a pillar of Ignite House of Innovation, home for innovators. We are asked for wellness and mindfulness solutions all the time. We are asked to address, especially now when COVID entered, we are asked to address stress, anxiety, fear, and depression at every level of corporate, from leadership down to rank and file, to frontliners and even customers, and especially VIP customers. For example, taking care of doctors for pharma or C-suite and senior executives, etc. At Ignite, wellness and mindfulness are only the very tip of the iceberg. They are part of a broader and deeper practice of our GPS, which leads to peak performance or peak wholeness, as we call it. It's not a normal term. But peak wholeness addresses our whole well-being of body, mind, heart, and spirit by going back to practices that nurture on a daily to weekly basis the foundations that make us most fully human. Our definition of peak wholeness will surprise you. Peak wholeness goes beyond wellness. It is our deep capacity to continually connect with our gifts, our unique gifts, and our pains, our purpose, and to channel them into relentless innovation and impact. Concrete ways we can renew our world and make it a better place for the people around us, especially those who most need our help. Another way of seeing this, if people are stressed and anxious, can we refocus them away from so many things out of their control and channel them instead to their GPS that is fully within their control? By connecting people with their own unique gifts and purpose in such a way that they can channel these into meaningful action and impact for themselves and the people around them? Can we make people whole, more well in body, mind, heart, and spirit? Okay, so now enter COVID-19, right? The pandemic. The pandemic isn't just the virus. It's also the pandemic of fear, panic, stress, anxiety, depression, paralysis, which in many ways is a lot more contagious than the virus itself. No ECQ can protect us from the pandemic of mental and emotional distress. In this situation, igniting peak wholeness is even more critical, if not the most critical factor, if we are to survive and if we are to thrive in our new normal. I'm going to disappear for a while and show you a few slides, just a few slides. Okay. There you go. So let's focus on the notion of restart. We've been hearing that word a lot, and I guarantee you that everyone will have it in their minds and mouths in the weeks ahead. Every restart must begin with restarting the people who will restart our companies, who will restart our communities, who will restart our country. It does not work in reverse. Our companies who will restart our communities, who will restart our country. It does not work in reverse in terms of our companies and communities will not restart themselves if we do not first restart the people who will fix all the areas of life and businesses that have been disrupted because of COVID, which is now broken. Applying our principles of peak performance and peak wholeness, we see pillars for every restart. I believe nobody's seeing the slide right now, so I'm not sure if I should just veer away from it, just get distracted. So, okay, so I'll just keep on talking without the slides. So applying, again, our principles of peak performance and peak wholeness, we see 3 pillars for every restart, no? And this is true whether you are individual, a team, or a company. So first, number 1, refocus people. Refocus people. Channel our people away from fear, stress, anxiety, and so many other things outside of our control. And channel our people to 24/7 practices that place peak performance fully within our control. More especially, this means nurturing at the individual level our deeply personal sense of meaning, purpose, resilience, grit, courage, and can-do attitude. And at the corporate level, it means nurturing in authentic ways our shared commitment to mission and service. So we do not do this with words, slogans, or posters. I said 24/7 practices. There is a method and actually metrics for refocusing people. So, second, reorganize around customers. Reorganize around customers. We channel our people away from product-centric problem solving, which is a trap that will keep us stuck in our old ways because our products were developed for a different time and place. Instead, channel our people towards 24/7 practices that nurture a deeper level of empathy and compassion for customers, which then allow us to discover and map emerging and never-ending areas of relevance, opportunity, and growth. Again, I reiterate, 24/7 practices. There is a method and metrics for reorganizing around customers. Third, recalibrate for speed. Channel our people away from business as usual practices that slow our market response. Endless meetings, red tape, over planning, politicking, etc. Instead, channel our people towards 24/7 practices that allow us to sprint solutions from idea to market in days. Yes, in days. You don't have time. Again, I mentioned 24/7 practices because there are methodical, measurable ways to make speed happen again and again and again, involving what? Rapid prototyping, feedback loops, continuous iterations, and so on. And final point, I'm sure that you noticed that I said 24/7 practices again and again and again. So think about any person who has achieved greatness or peak performance in any endeavor of life, whether it is a pianist or Picasso or Lea Salong or Manny Pacquiao, Steve Jobs or Kobe Bryant. Nobody ever got great by talking or watching videos or listening to TED Talks or gurus or attending workshops. People got great by practicing and practicing and practicing. The key to restarting in the new normal are the same keys to peak performance and peak wholeness. Practice times frequency, meaning you're doing it daily, weekly, times adoption, meaning that is the percentage of your workforce practicing with frequency. So the math formula is P times F times A. Practice times frequency times adoption, which means peak wholeness can be measured and fed back to every one of our people. Peak wholeness and restarting for the new normal. We've made this math and method very easy and actionable for each and every one of you. You can practice it to restart 100, or 10,000 people for the new normal. So that's it. I think my 20 minutes is done. Well, if you'd like to learn more, we'll send you a link and you can get a lot of free tools there. It's restart.ph. We can find a lot of tools there for you to be able to restart for the new normal. Thank you so much, and back to you, Dor.
Okay, thank you again, Joanna, for the story. So you are very, very strong person and truly very inspiring. I myself was moved. These make learnings, stories, the way you told them just make learnings more imaginative as you speak. So I was a bit mesmerizing for a while. Yes, the word restart, something hopeful for everyone, especially since we have a few days to end the ECQ. And I do agree that practice makes perfect. Again, for those who wish to get the slides of all the speakers, don't worry. Just post your email addresses, and also for those who registered, this will be automatically sent for you. So before we start with our Q&A, let's do a little recap. From all three experts, here's what we learned so far, at least in terms of the highlights. From our workplace and organizational development expert, Mr. Turla, we learned about the importance of flexible, remote, and work from home arrangements, as well as policies, right? So from our labor law expert, attorney Javier, we learned a lot of legal tips on how policies, benefits, and other matters, even closure of businesses, can legally take place. And lastly, from our corporate wellness expert, Joanna, well, we did listen to her interesting stories and also her restart program, which is very interesting, as well as her formula, P times F times A. Also imminent is her refocus, or her highlight to refocus on people first on an individual level. One thing common among all three speakers, if you notice, is focus on caring for the employees, okay? Care for them physically, emotionally, and mentally, because it's the well-being of these individuals, and they are very relevant staff in the workplace. On my end, also as an HR practitioner for small enterprises and social enterprises, I would say that regardless of the size of the business, your human resources are definitely your assets or human capital, as we now call it. So, since this is an HR forum, we now move to our Q&A portion. So, I have with me a lot of questions, and let me just pull up my list for everyone. Hold on. All right. And actually, the first question goes to Sir Ron. Sir Ron, um, there's a question here asking whether the company should have a physician to deal with employees. Is it necessary?
Well, probably to answer that, it is of course ideal to have a physician or a doctor. Although
Mm-hmm.
according to labor standards, you normally have to have at least 200 employees. I'm not sure if that will be uh, disregarded for now because of the present situation, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely having a physician or a doctor available will be the ideal setting for workplace. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now the next question goes to Attorney Javier. Okay. Attorney Javier, how can the allowances be adjusted if in case they have already been stipulated in the contracts?
Yeah. Oo, maganda yung tanong, no? Because in the Philippines, once an allowance or a benefit is already stipulated in the contract, an employer cannot unilaterally withdraw that allowance or benefit. Kasi it will amount to
Mm-hmm.
a diminution of benefit, which is a violation of the labor laws. So one way to do it is, one, ask the employee's consent. If the employee will understand your predicament, yung iba dyan, I see some business owners, instead of terminating employees, just talking to their employees and asking for understanding and reducing the allowance a bit so that he will not be terminated. I've seen employees consent to that kind of arrangement. And also, second, aralin yung employment contract. The employment contract, the grant of allowances might be conditional in nature. So kung hindi ma-meet yung condition, then the allowance is not paid. But if the contract is strict that the allowance must be paid without condition, then the employer unilaterally cannot remove that allowance.
All right. Thank you, Attorney. Now,
Thank
this
you.
question goes to Joanna. Uh, well, indeed, mental illness is something that is very relevant now and very much open. How is the best way to address these sort of issues? And how can you probably determine them in a person? Is there a way to see this, perhaps?
I don't know if we the question you say what you say that to see this it's impossible to see it,
Yeah.
right? But what I'm the tools that are being recommended not only by us but also by other psychologists and psychiatrists are, number one is mindfulness. Mindfulness is a
Uh-huh.
big tool right now that we can practice, and second, others are averse to it, but yoga is also a good tool to use. Um,
Hmm.
what you can do is, I think, see, Ronnie mentioned earlier about providing third party providers in terms of coming up with like maybe group coaching sessions or something that's accessible, easily accessible to employees. It's a safe and secure place where they can open up and have a support group, perhaps, if not a one-on-one coaching service, no. But this is something that all companies should consider right now, because we know for a fact that the anxiety, depression, and all these mental health issues have raised because of this pandemic.
All right. Thank you very much, Joanna. Now, for Sir Ron, okay, this question is kind of tricky. In terms of leadership, who should lead? Top management, middle management? Where do they start?
Mm, okay, yeah, that's a very good question to ask, no? But well, I've always believed that leadership is not based on titles or based on hierarchy. Of course, if you study organizations, formally, of course, you have to look at the titles, no? But I've looked at organizations or companies where they thrive, not necessarily because the top leaders are a very good leaders. Sometimes it's really the frontliners, the employees, for example. I've always believed that personal leadership should be the starting point, especially in a crisis situation. You cannot expect always that your immediate boss, for example, or your immediate superior will be the one leading. So first thing to do
Mm-hmm.
is to be yourself, no? And of course, other people has to provide. I think an important element here, if you're the top leader in the company, you have to provide a supportive environment, no? Meaning that uh, prior to the COVID, no, obviously if you are directing people, you'll have to now shift to a supportive leadership style where you allow mistakes, you become more flexible as to dealing with the situation, because as this crisis has tell us, it's an evolving thing. It's not something like a something that we have experienced in the past. So we have to be flexible enough to adapt to the situation.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, this next question is about the Restart program. So, Miss Joanna, you mentioned organizational culture. Is there such thing as an ideal culture? Should this be changed in order to have this Restart program? How should management start or go about with this?
Okay, like what I mentioned earlier, you have to restart from your people. Um, we are a house of innovation, so therefore we were able to integrate all these programs that we are creating into uh, one app. Okay, it's a tool that you can actually put out there and scale it to your organization, regardless
Mhm.
how many people that there are. In terms of culture, you've heard me already say it over and over again. When it comes to people, we are aligning the vision of the company, the mission of the company, with the mission of the person. I already told it in my story, wherein people have their own GPS, genius, purpose, and service. People must be able
Mhm.
to find an alignment in terms of their role in the company. If you wake that GPS, you activate that GPS up. Can you just imagine people going in and out of work where their GPS is activated versus a company wherein the culture is a person is going in and out of work like robots because they're going to work just, you know, just checking in and out because they're just after their salary. If people have this mindset and this culture that wherein people are light up, ignited, wherein they know that
Uh-huh.
what they are doing in the company is adding value to the company, and they are being able to add value to the lives of the people that they are drawn to serve, meaning regardless, may they be their customer, or if you're from HR, your stakeholder is actually now your colleagues, right? Your fellow employees.
Mhm.
Therefore, it's a real, well, it's an ideal world, but we believe that if this kind of awareness is put out there, we can actually change that the culture that we have right now, wherein people are just so focused on just going in and out of work just for financial reasons.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Now, this set of questions goes to attorney. Okay, attorney. Business owners want to know how exactly they can practice good faith. I mean,
Siguro
how can they show that?
oo. Oo. I think the question came from the requirements of the termination of employment. Understandably, the good faith as an
Yes.
element in termination of employment is an abstract concept. But for me, no, I explain it in this manner. Good faith is if you are able to be honest and true, and you have fair and reasonable criteria. Honest and true as to why is the company terminating employees. So if the reason is you are suffering business losses, or you are overmanned, then you must be honest and true. Hindi yan parang may hidden agenda ka na terminate mo lang yung mga employee. Doon naman sa fair and reasonable criteria, it must answer the question, why me? Because the employees will ask, why are you terminating me instead of the others? So you must to have a fair and reasonable criteria. For example, performance-based, first in, first out, other criteria that may be available for you to answer that question. So you have to answer two things. Why are you doing this? And why that particular employee? And in answering those questions, you must be true and honest, and you'll be able to prove good faith in that regard.
All right, thank you. Another question for attorney. Sorry, medyo madami for legal.
Okay.
How is proper monitoring or documentation right now for work from home options?
Oo, may mahirap, no? Naging challenge siya because we were,
Uh-huh.
to a certain extent, not prepared for this kind of a eventuality.
Yeah.
More than law, it's probably best practice. I've seen companies wherein madami dyan, they just trust the employees that they will do their work. So
Uh,
naging output based siya rather than time in time out. No, so as long as the
mm,
employer at the start of the day or the start of the week will be able to tell the employees, ito ang dapat mong gawin matapos sa linggo na to, and you should be able to finish this task at the end of the week and you're fine. So kinalimutan na yung time. Meron naman nagkakaroon ng call every hour. So kanya-kanyang diskarte. Oo, but malaking portion talaga, and understandably so, is the trust given by the employer to the employees that they will perform their function.
all right, thank you. Now for Joanna, some business owners are asking, no, what is a simple restart checklist? Para at least they know how to just jumpstart.
Well, what I gave earlier already is a restart checklist in terms of refocusing your people. You have to have some programs for you to be able to focus on people, because when you start your people, you have to know your baseline. Where are you coming from? You have to check on your people where they are. They're not the same people before COVID. They've been affected. Everybody's been affected by this COVID. That's the first one.
Mhm.
And then when you say reorganize around your customers, even your customers have changed. The mindset of people have changed. So regardless if you're an employee, we're all customers, right? The behavior, the consumer behavior and psychology have completely, it's been disrupted. So you have to also again, change, reorganize around the customers using empathy and compassion as well. In innovation, empathy is number one. You have to be able to figure out, you have to have that empathy when you are treating your customers. You have to treat them as human beings, right? And then recalibrate for speed, meaning you have to find a way for you to be able to be out there in the market again with your new processes, with your new tools, with your new strategies as fast as possible, because this is no longer the same as before. We're living now in a digital world. Now everybody's here and everybody, there's so much information now out there. It's like information overload, which means unahan. Lahat tayo were like, the pace has like tripled, quadrupled in terms of that. So you have to be out there and you cannot wait to perfect things. There are innovation tools that you can do that, so that you can rapid prototype and have feedback loops and constantly bring out whatever product you have, even if it's not that perfect yet. I stay by what I said earlier. Focus people, organize around customers, and recalibrate your speed.
Thank you very much for that. Now this question goes to both Sir Ronald and Attorney Javier. This is regarding HR policies. So the question for Sir Ronald is, what if there are already existing HR policies? Should these be changed? All right, so let's start with that first, I think.
Yeah. My answer to that is yes. Your policies right now should first be reviewed and then identify, particularly on areas of recruiting, compensation, and then employee discipline as well. So, you of course you start with a work arrangement. Again, going back to probably your contract, because if you start, let's say, working from home, there has to be a sort of like an agreement also with the employee with the new policies that you're implementing. So very important kasi for HR to always make sure that there is proper communication of policies before implementation. So if there are changes by the management with regards to the policies, from management down to the employees, there should be ample communication. Well, at least at this time we have virtual meetings, so there has to be that kind of
Yeah.
communication. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And now, in the case of attorney, of course, there are some companies who have codes of conduct, right? And then these have been received prior to their employment. So if there's going to be a change in HR policies, how will these be affected legally?
Mm-mm. If you need to change them or modify or supplement, the only requirement number one in coming up with the policy, the new ones, is to consult the employees. No? So you can email them or have a town hall meeting and explain. Siguro you can ask them to sign attendance sheet para later on, if you will be questioned whether you really consulted, you have an evidence that you consulted because of the attendance sheets. Tapos, yung side naman ng whether the employees receive a copy, all you have to do is to issue a acknowledgement receipt, give them a copy through email or physically, and then ask them to sign a acknowledgement receipt, so that later on, if asked whether they actually receive the supplements or the modification, you have an evidence to show that they did receive those documents.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And then to Sir Ronald, two questions. Number one, should there be a project team or transition team in the case of this change management? Because as we all know, well, of course, there are small businesses and some owners are hands-on, and it's quite difficult as compared to those who are medium scale companies. So, uh, is there a need for this?
Well, the concept of a project team is, I think, very relevant right now. Sort of like having a lead person with probably one or two persons assisting, and yeah, you can use some project teams as long as
Uh-huh.
you can say that, or you can define their objectives, the purpose of the project team, and then how long will the project team be operating, no? Because sometimes a project team might be different from your traditional organizational structure. For example, parang
Okay.
have a typical organizational structure before, with a project team, there will be a new person,
Mm-hmm.
or probably an existing person with a different designation. Yeah, so you can do that. Now, if you will be
Mm. Mm.
people, I
Okay.
suggest just identify one or two persons that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Trust is very important in a project team position. Somebody that you can rely on to deliver the message, to solve problems, or even to make decisions. So identify those people that would be part of the project team.
Okay. Thank you. And then this next question goes to attorney. The question is, let's say 50% of the employees go to the office. If one is exposed during commute, how is the legal way to deal with that?
Exposed to COVID-19, ano, tapos the employee was able
Yeah.
to report for work siguro, no? And then later on,
Mm.
based on
Correct.
assessment, the employee tested positive. Under the guidelines, all
Yeah.
employees in the workplace must observe the 14-day quarantine. Nandiyan mabigat, oh. So 14 days
Okay.
lang hindi papasok lahat until ito kasi alam na nating positive pero yung iba suspected pa lang, no? Pag nag-negative, balikan na kayo kahit hindi
Oo.
pa tapos yung 14. Pero pag nag-positive yan, you have to observe the 14-day quarantine. So lahat sila hindi makakapasok.
Mm. Okay. And then actually, the follow-up question is related to that. Will the company be required to have pre-health tests? Diba meron tayong pre-employment tests. So are there now pre-health tests related to COVID-19 before they are allowed to work?
Oh, sa ngayon wala naman ano, wala naman, but there's a suggestion that we do COVID testing in the employment offices, and if that is the
Mm-hmm.
decision of the employer must shoulder the cost. Sa ngayon hindi pa siya mandatory na every employees will have to be tested. Wala pang ganyang guidance. Meron encouragement to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. And then another question for you is what are the legal number of days for employees to go to work
Legal number of days. Siguro is tinatanong niya
yes
kung
at this point?
ilan yung maximum mo. At well, the labor laws are not suspended. So under the labor code, the employer may require an employee to report for work for 6 days in a week because the mandatory requirement
Mm.
is to give that person one rest day. So 6 days yung maximum, and lesser than that, of course, pwede. Flexible working arrangement yung tawag doon.
Mm. Okay, okay, as what Sir Ronald mentioned. And there's one particular question, no, very specific. So for staff who will be working 3 times a day, because let's say of the size of the office, and for them to ensure physical distancing, is that acceptable legally? Three
Yes,
times a
yes.
day.
3 times a week siguro ibig sabihin
Okay.
niya, no? 3 times a week. Oo, pwede yan. O, rotation ang
Mm-mm.
tawag diyan, oo. Ang
I mean
question,
a week,
a
sorry.
week.
Yeah,
Oo,
yeah.
ang question na lang is if
Mm.
hindi mo schedule. Are you working at home or wala ka talagang ginagawa?
In the
So pwede
office.
kasi yun eh.
In
Oh,
the office
in
now.
the office 3 days, edi pwede yan. No? So it's part of the rotation of workers is one of the flexible working arrangements allowed in the Philippines.
Oh. And in that case, will their salary be affected and contributions as well? Because there's a basis for that, right?
Kaya nga ang question diyan yung 3 days nasa office ka, yung 2 days ba work from home ka? If the answer is yes, you are working from home,
Mm.
and then effectively are you working the entire week, so no change. But if the 3 days you are working at the office and
Oh,
two
okay.
days you are not working, then no work, no pay will apply.
All right. And then the last question is for Miss Joanna. Is it best to get a third party consultant or someone in the company can do wellness like yoga if they have extra talent? Because right now businesses are having troubles also with funding. So, what are the basic or simple, let's say, exercises that can be done?
There are a lot of creative ways actually to do this. No, if you have some people in your team whose genius is actually doing that, why not? There are a lot of
Yeah.
corporate wellness initiatives, campaigns that are being done by HRs, right? So if you really don't have funds to
Mm-hmm.
consultants, but if you also have funds for consultants, don't stop yourself from it's I think it will be a good investment for you to be able to have third party expertise in this kind of uh, intervention. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, those are all the questions so far. Let me double check. All right. And I guess it's time. I'd like to request for everyone to please be on screen because I will be asking for some parting words. Okay. So, of course, we want to be very positive and hopeful in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of businesses are scared. But because of this forum, they now know somehow how to plan, all right, or how to move towards execution. And before we end, may I please ask parting words from our experts, starting with Mr. Ronald Turla. Sir Ron?
Okay. Well, probably my parting message would be because of the crisis, we have to be able to reset and recreate. So I think for HR professionals and entrepreneurs, we have to take courage. No? So I think a lot of people right now are afraid. So we need to find courage from ourselves, from our family, from the people that we're working with, and really take step. No, I've always believed that just like what Joanna have mentioned about, to achieve peak performance, you have to really to focus on the day to day, the practices that you are doing, and not strive for perfection, but make sure that you forgive yourself for mistakes that you will encounter along the way. So yeah, those things, and finally, of course, uh, give it all to God also, so that
Mm,
what
I
grace
agree.
that you have are all up to Him. So again, thank you for this time that we have shared all this practices, information, and answered all the questions.
Okay, and then Mr. Ron, if ever they would like to reach you, how can they reach you for further questions?
Yep. They can reach me through my Facebook page. We can immediately respond to you. So you can go to our page. That's Talent Reach. Okay, and you can also connect with me through my Facebook, Ronaldo Turla. Yeah, same is true with my LinkedIn as well. That's my contact.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Attorney, um, any parting words for
All right.
our viewers out there?
Okay. In the past days, no rules and regulations are being issued left and right. At times
Mm-hmm.
we get confused, no, and that's okay. And that's okay. All this are understandable because we are living at an unprecedented times. We just have to keep ourselves abreast and updated. For labor law, I think my suggestion is setting aside law. I think the employer at this time, more than anything else, must add a little compassion to the policies that they will implement. And for the employees, I think they should put a little understanding for their employers, because everyone, as you know, is faced with a challenge nowadays. So I'm sure together we'll be able to hurdle this challenge. Thank you.
Very nice. And how can they reach you, attorney?
Yes, they can visit our website www.tolosajavierlaw.com, or they can email me directly at filimonry.javier@tolosajavierlaw.com. I'll answer the
All right.
questions, promise.
Thank you very much. And last but not the least, Miss Joanna, any parting words for our viewers out there?
Okay, thank you again for inviting me. I would like to leave you with a tool that you can use to restart for the new normal. Great things
Mm-hmm.
happen after taking one full breath. Breath is life. If we want to regain focus, clarity, and balance, let's pause, elevate our mindfulness by bringing our attention to the present moment. Once we get there, take one full breath by inhaling through your nose, bring the air to your belly, and exhale through your mouth. And then after that, we're ready to restart. That's it for me.
All right. And how may they reach you,
Okay.
Joanna?
You can get in touch with me. Go to my page at joannaalberto.ph. We have a lot of actually free tools that you can use. We've launched public service when the COVID started by bringing out programs and free webcasts out there. That's how I met Ronnie, actually.
Wow.
So
Wow. Wow.
you can access this. You can just get in touch with me, and I'll give you the links through my page, joannaalberto.ph. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. So I guess it's the end of our forum. And before I formally end, I would like to share these quotes from Steve Vine. Human resources isn't a thing that we do, it's a thing that runs our business. And of course, from Jim Collins, great vision without great people is irrelevant. Once again, in behalf of our three experts, our media partner V81 Radio Worldwide and program partner Talk Shop Asia, we thank all of you for engaging with us. And we hope that this HR forum can help jumpstart you and your business towards a new normal. Again, my name is Darlene De Maunahan, your moderator and certified human resources professional. Have a great day to all.
We would like to thank everyone who engaged with us during this HR forum. This event was brought to you by DR, an HR collaboration. Again, we would like to thank our media partner, V81 Radio Worldwide, and our program partner, Talk Shop Asia, the Philippine Retailing Industries Program and Communities on Business Exchanges. You can download their apps via App Store or Google Play. Once again, to our business sector, let us bravely face the new normal.
Tunog Pinoy, Tatak Pinoy. The future of radio. This is your all hits, all Pinoy internet radio station. This is V81 Radio Worldwide.
Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man ito'y mapapakinggan.